Mm-mm. No.
Everybody should be muted until we get ready to start. Good afternoon. My name is Judge Karimu F. Hill Harvey. I'm the chair of the Sarasota County Bar Association Council for Diversity and Inclusion. I would like to thank our viewers and the panel for attending and participating in this town hall. Silence is not an option. The recent events of George Floyd's death and the protests have triggered the Sarasota County Bar Association and its Council for Diversity and Inclusion to stand in solidarity in demonstration across the nation as we speak against systemic racism that is pervasive in our society. We are committed to promoting and encouraging meaningful law enforcement and criminal justice reform and a better understanding of the issues. Today's conversation is another step in our mission. Finally, which is silence is not an option. Finally, before I introduce our co-moderators, I want to remind you that the Sarasota County Bar Council for Diversity and Inclusion remains committed in providing scholarships to deserving minority law students and to graduates of the Booker High School Law Academy. We were honored to receive a $50,000 challenge grant from the William Muirhead Charitable Foundation at the Community Fund at the Community Foundation. Please consider making a donation. Any amount will help us. Also, we would like to thank the Sarasota County Bar Association for donating Panera gift certificates to the first 100 registrants to this town hall. And with that, I turn the program over to co-host moderators, Keith DeBose, attorney at law, as well as Tamara Williams, attorney at law. Thank you.
Tamara, you're on. Unmute.
Yeah, I think we lost Keith Tamara.
Tamara, can you hear us? I'll square that away.
If everybody can be patient, we have some technical difficulties and we'll be with you in a moment. Thank you for being patient. One of our moderators is traveling in his car. However, he is able to moderate this, and that's why we have a co-host today.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to start with our first question. I just want to introduce, today we have one of our panelists is Natasha Clemens, who is the founder and president of the Rodney Mitchell Foundation. We also have our elected public defender, Larry Eager, who is on the panel, as well as Charlie Ann Seifert, who is a philanthropist within our community. Lastly, we also have Deidre Z, who is the president of the Black Lives Matter movement that is in Sarasota and Manatee County. And I want to direct the very first question to Deidre Z. Now, there are some concerns by many white people that the Black Lives Matter movement is a political movement, and that it is a pro-Black, anti-white, or an anti-police organization. If you can explain what the Black Lives Matter movement is all about, what is the Black Lives Matter movement origin and its agenda, And has there been any pushback when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement?
So first, thank you all for having me on your panel this afternoon. So Black Lives Matter, the movement of it is to bring awareness to what we're going on in this country and what's been going on for decades, way before I was born, way before a lot of us on this panel was born, when the first Africans hit the soil of America in chains. So that's what the movement is about. I will say chapter by chapter, our chapter in the movement itself, we are nonpartisan. While we do tell people to vote, encourage people to vote and vote smart, we are a nonpartisan movement, which means we don't endorse any candidates, or we're not bought out by any political agendas. Our sole focus is to get justice and to put America on notice that we want justice for the lives that have been lost. Like I said, chapter by chapter, we all have certain agendas based off what's going on locally. We definitely do tap into the national platform of defunding the police and investing in communities. That's one of our objectives and one of the things that we are looking at. When people hear about defunding the police and investing in communities, people don't often quite understand what that means exactly. They kind of go to, well, if we defund the police, then we won't have officers on the streets, or we won't have what we need to be protected. And that isn't so. When we talk about defund the police and investing in communities, we talk about pretty much what this country has done to public education for so very long, with cutting budget in public education and allocating it elsewhere, like to law enforcement. When we can take that budget and put it back into public education, we can take that budget and put it back into underserved communities. We can take that budget and put it back into programs and resources that can help children in underserved communities thrive. And so that's what we mean when we talk about defunding the police and investing in communities. And that is an overall movement objective.
This next question is going to go to all of the panelists. Now, we have titled this town hall, "Silence is Not an Option." What does that mean to you, and why is silence not an option? How will talking about this issue help us move towards a solution?
We have to have real conversations. And I want other people to talk to, because this is a conversation. But we have to have real conversations with ourselves, and we have to be willing to do the work. And this is a real conversation. And we talk about lives. We talk about people who are losing their lives at the hands of law enforcement because of just the color of their skin. And we talk about that happening at a very, very, very high rate in Black communities and to Black people. And so when we talk about silence not being the option, what we're saying is if you're silent in what's going on, if you're silent and just seeing this go on, then you're just as guilty as the people who pulled the trigger or who are causing this type of havoc on people of color.
Tamara, I would like to jump in. And just for the record, I'm more than a philanthropist. I've been an attorney in this town since 1983, and I currently serve as the chair of the Florida Bar's Standing Committee on Diversity and Inclusion. So I'm very invested in this topic. Why silence is not an option? Primarily, I feel that applies more to white people, because we don't talk about those issues. And through my work with the state bar's diversity committee and my work with the local diversity committee, what I've seen and observed is ignorance. And I don't say that critically, let me call it a lack of education. They don't understand. So all of us, white people, have an obligation to educate ourselves, to learn, and to have a conversation about it. It's interesting. The University of Florida Levin College of Law held a webinar 2 weeks ago, and it was called Law Firms After George Floyd. And one of the primary messages that the law firms conveyed after surveying their lawyers, their minority lawyers, is the need for conversation, the need for communication to help us understand and to inspire us to work harder toward racial equality, ending institutional racism, and ensuring social justice. I know in our own legal community, after George Floyd's murder, we engaged in an incredibly, sometimes uncomfortable, but that was necessary in order to get lawyers who didn't understand why the George Floyd murder resonated with so many of us, upset so many of us. So that's why conversation is necessary and silence is not an option. There has to be a willingness to speak up, to speak out, to stand up, to stand out. And without that, you're right, Deidre, we're all complicit.
Hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Natasha. I'm Rodney Mitchell's mother. My son was killed by 2 Sarasota sheriff's deputies 6 months after graduating college. And silence is very unacceptable. I feel that if you know something, say something. I don't think that it's right that, you know, anyone, including police officers who are supposed to serve and protect, and they're basically able to get away with killing someone, such as my son, execution style. Nothing was done, nothing happened, and they went on with their lives. While, again, me as his mother, I've been fighting for 8 years, yet there's, you know, and there's been silence throughout the entire 8 years. I'm simply grateful for Deidre because she has been my right-hand woman, a girl, shall I say, through it all. And to be honest, yes, it's very important that we say something. If you know something, say something. If you don't say anything, you're just as guilty as the ones who committed the crime. I just feel that, you know, my son was a really good kid. He was, what happened to him was not acceptable. And I will continue to stand on what's right. And I think that I just know that everybody should be involved. If you know something, again, say something.
I'll jump in now. Why not? I first, by disclaimer, I find it interesting, and I've had this discussion. What is my role in support of Black Lives Matter? Because I should be supporting and not leading. This is a Black movement and not a white movement. You know, defining what the mission or goal of Black Lives Matter, reading an article recently, it was distilled, in my estimation, in simply the promise of living an unterrorized life in the 21st century. And so I had an interesting time listening to John Heilman, who is a historian, speak this morning. And he was talking about where would he have stood back in with King and the March on Selma. And he would like to have thought, since he was too young, that he would have stood with King and marched. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, what side of history are we going to be? And I think that standing with Black Lives Matter, I would like to be able to think that I will talk to my grandchildren and say that I stood on the right side. And to accuse Black Lives Matter of being a terrorist organization or a radical organization when it's the simple message of equality that is being sought, and the disregard of our history, because we talk about George Floyd as it just started. This is a conversation that should have been going on for the past 400 years. It didn't start with George Floyd, and it didn't start with King. It has been going on for the entire history of this country. And if we don't have an honest dialogue, I don't think that we can even discuss the healing process until there's that recognition. And we time and time again refuse to have that conversation. So that's what I wanted to raise as far as remaining silent.
Hey guys, I was unable to join initially because I was kicked off, and that's kind of ironic because about a week ago it was attempted to silence me or give me some direction on how to move this process forward. So I guess the internet was trying to silence me as well, but I was able to get back online with the help of my daughter here. And I want to ask this question initially to Charlie Ann and to Larry, but I do want Deidre Z and Natasha to join in. But when you have an issue dealing with the importance of Black lives, why is it important for the Sarasota County Bar Association and lawyers in general to take a stand and support the position that the lives of Black people matter just as much as other lives? Can you talk to that just a little bit, Larry and Charlie Ann, and Natasha, if you and Deidre Z would join in on that, I'd appreciate it.
Larry, I'll go first, if you don't mind. You can't separate lawyers from the bar, really. But I want to say that lawyers and law firms, I'm going to put law firms in that, this is our opportunity. We can be champions in changing the damaged dynamics in our nation, the cultural dynamics of our nation. We can be the heroes if we accept that responsibility. And the reason I say that, think about it, the law impacts and lawyers have an impact on every aspect of our life. So I feel that it really, truly is our responsibility. And I need to start with first, because that the Florida Bar has taken a very bold stand in this. It is in their strategic plan. It is in their recommendations to all of the committee. I want to find it so I can read it exactly. They say that the Florida Bar's commitment, the Standing Committee on Diversity and Inclusion, is a great asset to the Florida Bar and exemplifies the bar's commitment to diversity within the bar, the legal profession, legal education, and in the justice system, and the bar's commitment to a diverse and inclusive environment with equal access and equal opportunity for all. And I feel I needed to say that because I don't want any lawyer or law firm out there to think that the work that we are trying to do was some rogue movement or some political movement. This is what our state bar stands for. And I know this is what our local diversity committee stands for. So what can lawyers do? As chair of the state bar committee, I get the luxury, the privilege of interfacing and interacting with law firms across the state. And they are much more progressive than what we are here. And I've learned some of the things that they've done. And I think that every lawyer here should listen to it and take heed and perhaps adopt some of those practices. They recognize, and that's the first step, they recognize that there is not diversity in our profession. And yet they recognize that our profession seeps into every aspect of our life. So after George Floyd was murdered, what they did was that many of them issued a statement, which I felt was unbelievable. Our bar issued a statement, but how many firms in Sarasota and Manatee reached out to their associates and to their partners and said, hey, we need to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Well, they actually surveyed the lawyers in their firms and said, tell us, the minority lawyers, what can we do? And the answers were consistent across the firms. Number one, they wanted empathy and understanding. And that goes to Larry Eager's comments about education. They wanted us to understand American history, not the whitewash version that we all learned in high school, mm-hmm. but they wanted us to become ardent students of Black history. And I have committed myself to doing that. And it's been an eye-opener for me. Then they wanted those conversations that we talked about. And then finally, they wanted action, not just rhetoric. And so what did that action mean? And this is where I get into what the role the lawyers and our own bar can take. They wanted the law firms to do a thorough scrubbing, to re-examine their practices and their policies. Look at what they're doing with hiring and recruiting, and accept that we have a social and ongoing social responsibility to try to increase the diversity and inclusion within the law firm, within the judiciary, within government institutions. So every firm, I challenge you to re-examine your hiring and recruiting processes. And don't tell me it doesn't exist here in Sarasota. I know of an incident right here in Sarasota where a young Black lawyer was not hired because he or she was told, well, we don't think you're going to stay in Sarasota. We don't think you've been here, in spite of the fact that this lawyer has been here for almost 6 years and has deep ties to the community. So don't hide behind that. Re-examine and dig deep. And I know that's going to be uncomfortable, but dig deep. Look at your recruiting. You can't just simply say Black lawyers don't apply. You can't stop there. We have a pipeline committee and our local bar association, Council for Diversity, and the state bar has a robust pipeline committee where we go into the law schools. Contact us, get in touch with them. And I'm going to give you an example of what one of the law firms did, trying to find out why there aren't lawyers in healthcare law. Well, they went to the law schools and said, you know what, why are Black lawyers being moved toward criminal and family law? Why are they not being introduced to this more lucrative practice of law? So it's incumbent upon firms, and now the Florida Bar's sections are going to be going to those law schools to present potential career opportunities. Another thing that the lawyers can do and our bar can do is sometimes dues are too high. We can offer free or reduced bar fees to young minority lawyers or young lawyers together. Now I want to talk about the role of the local bar. Keith DuBose mentioned that an effort to try to silence him. Apparently there was a meeting of the executive committee of the Sarasota County Bar Association. They summoned Keith and actually challenged him as to the need, why we should have Deidre or Natasha participate in this panel, alleging that it was political and not in furtherance of social justice. So let's take a look at that. They summoned Keith to an all-white board. Now, let's think about that. There are only a handful of Black lawyers in Sarasota, but Keith had to go alone and present to an all-white board why we should have this conversation today. Now, I am thrilled to share that the majority, Keith gave a passionate and eloquent, as he always does, presentation about why Black Lives Matter and why we have to have this conversation. And I'm happy to share that the majority voted in support of him. But I don't know about you, it makes me feel very uncomfortable to know that our board, our governing institution, has lawyers serving on it that don't understand. Now, I'm not criticizing them. I'm not saying they should be banished from the earth. But what I'm saying is that the board now needs to recognize the need for education. And what has to happen, in my humble opinion, is there needs to be some anti-racism training and education. I think it should go further than that. I think that there should be a requirement, and I'm going to propose that to end, because I think, by the way, that is the definition of systemic racism or institutional racism, that we've got an all-white board that's uneducated and doesn't understand what systemic racism is, and they're trying to prevent us from educating the public, from educating lawyers. So what I think needs to happen is they need to look at their policies. I think every lawyer who is a candidate for membership on that board should sign a pledge, committing themselves to what the Florida Bar says and to the mission of the Council for Diversity and Inclusion. I think members from the Council for Diversity and Inclusion should be allowed to sit in on the interview process, ask questions, and make recommendations. And I certainly do not have a comfort level with having a president of our bar association who has opined that he or she is opposed to the Black Lives Matter movement without taking the time and making the commitment to learn. And it's an ongoing process to learn, so it's not going to happen overnight, but there's got to be that commitment that they are willing to learn. So what can lawyers do? We can do a lot. Some of the things that the law firms did on the East Coast, this is an important thing, in addition to examining recruiting and hiring and retention. And by the way, they asked a lot of hard questions about retention. It's actually been shared with me, not only by law firms, by the way, but some nonprofits said, well, we had Black lawyers, we had Black people on our board of directors, but they don't stay. Well, don't put the onus on them. Turn around and look at yourselves. Why? You know, inclusion means involvement, engagement, empowerment. What did the law firm do? What did that nonprofit board do to make them feel respected and engaged and listened to? One firm actually executed their own social justice plan, and I think this is a brilliant idea. Most young associates get billable hour credit for community engagement, but I know a lot of times they think that community engagement means, oh, go get on the board of this one or that one so you make connections. But the firms on the East Coast are now giving billable hour credit for work done promoting diversity and inclusion. They are now working to require law schools to teach a course in anti-racism. They are joining the efforts to teach, to require the bar, the Florida bar, to require a course on anti-racism. And this is the most important one, and I encourage our law firms to do this, is they are hosting conversations like this with their clients. And that's unbelievable to me. And and I know that there are law firms in town. I know Williams Parker has hosted discussions or served on panels with nonprofit world. I know Shoemaker Loop has been involved with the Chamber of Commerce. Well, why not talk about this subject with your clients? Yeah. Why not talk about, because that's where the power is, because at the end of the day, law firms are in the business to make money. Finally, and then I will share the panel. Finally, the last thing that law firms are doing, and I'm begging the law firms of Sarasota and Manatee to do this, is join the National Alliance, Law Firm Alliance to End Anti-Racism. It now has over 240 firms across the country, and they are coordinating large-scale, high-impact pro bono projects focused on addressing systemic racism. They are leveraging the resources of the private bar to amplify the voices of communities and individuals oppressed by racism. And they're examining a better use of the law as a vehicle for change that then benefits people for color. And they are targeting businesses and industries. So what they want the message to be is, and it's happening without a lot of arm twisting, it's happening on its own. Businesses and industries are coming out and saying, I'm almost done, coming out and saying, we're not going to let you represent us unless you have a diverse workforce.
Larry, if you want
That was good.
to respond.
Okay. I'm not quite sure how to follow that up. The question that was posed, I'll start from the fact that I come from a rather unique position, being the elected public defender. I also share the unique position of being the president of Legal Aid of Minnesota. So within my office, I have 40 attorneys. Legal Aid, we can talk about that at a later time. I have to tell you that from a personal perspective, the responsibility of my office is to represent the rights of our clients. The issues that pertain to Black Lives Matter apply to all of our clients. The conduct of law enforcement that we can put blame on, which I really don't. I take a much different tact as far as the role of law firms. I'm not engaged in identity politics. It's not the number of Blacks that you employ. It's not the number of Latinos that you employ. It's what you do in the firm. And when you ask, my office is committed to the representation of indigent people, period. And that's what we do to address this question. Legal aid, that's another issue altogether. And I think that we give little credit or little credence to how they are engaged in this community and how they represent not only Blacks within the community, but all people who are struggling financially. And what I don't see the bar doing is participating in that. It's not the question of who you hire and that they get to be part of the white elite. That's not what I'm seeking. I like to see the engagement of what services you're actually providing to the community. That's how law firms can become more engaged. We could all be doing more pro bono work. We could be providing those sort of services. And that's what is conspicuously absent from this community. I'll end it there.
I will say, just to add to the conversation, what I say often with a lot of the volunteers that we get with Black Lives Matter who are non-Black and who want to be a part of the movement and who want to join initiatives to have these conversations or to show up to spaces to speak on behalf of the injustices that Black people face. I think it's important for anybody who wants to be a part of a BLM movement or who wants to learn more, not only have the conversations, but actually go inside the communities that you are seeking to be in support of. Go inside of Newtown, build relationships and build rapport. Go to some of these schools. Let some of the children know who've seen such violence on TV, through social media, on the news, of people who look like them being killed at crazy rates. Actually go inside those schools, go inside of Emily Booker. Not just Booker High, go inside of Booker Middle, go inside some of these schools that have a higher population of Black children and build relationships and build rapport. Go to the Roy McBean Boys and Girls Club. I grew up in Newtown and I went to the Roy McBean Boys and Girls Club. Start building relationships and rapport with the families and the very people that you are seeking to be in support of and to stand with. That's the same thing in Manatee County. Go to Oneiko. Go to the DeSoto Boys and Girls Club. When you're in Palmetto, go to the Palmetto Boys and Girls Club. Go to the Palmetto Youth Center where there are Black children. Go to some of these Black events that are held in Newtown, in Oneiko, in Samoset, in Down East Bradenton, in these public school systems. Go to some of these schools or go to some of these events. Go to some of these, of course, COVID is going on right now, but racism has been going on for a very, very, very long time in this country. And Black people didn't create racism. We didn't put ourselves in chains and come over here and continue to oppress ourselves. So I think that when we're talking about people who are wanting to be a part of the movement or to be a part of dismantling racism or having these conversations, we also have to put in that work as well, as far as how many Black people outside of my law firm do I actually know besides the ones that pay me or the ones that I'm representing? How many events have I actually been to? Have I gotten out of my comfort zone to build rapport or build any type of relationships with these very people that I'm seeking to support or that I'm seeking to stand with? And so I tell all of the volunteers that anybody who wants to do this work, that's equally as important as well.
Thank you. Did you want to add to it, Ms. Clemens? I'm sorry.
I
You
do.
wanna-
I do. I would like to add to this discussion. When it comes to law firms, I feel that it's very imperative that they join forces with individuals such as myself, that so that they can be involved because they understand the language, they can speak the language. The evidence that's presented by the attorneys who's basically fighting to win their cases, for instance, like the sheriff, those lawyers could have come on board to find out exactly what was going on with my case. I can only speak for my case right now, and be able to speak to me and tell me exactly what they were saying and exactly what was going on. Because the concern that I have is that I'm a nurse, and so I don't care if you're black, white, green, or brown. I will treat you as I will treat you like gold. My thing is that if I draw everybody's blood that's on this panel, if I draw everybody's blood, our blood would be red. The only difference is that our blood types. Like, you know, this morning I didn't wake up and say, okay, I want to be black. This is the color I am, and this is the color that I was born. So I just think that it's very imperative that those law firms, you know, come out of those shells that they're in, come out in the communities, like Deidre Z stated. Come out, see what's going on, learn, get educated, because we are people as well. And I just feel that I mean, I'm a nurse and I do a lot of volunteering work. I mean, I don't mind going out there, you know, getting my hands dirty. But the thing about it is that if they know what's going on, they understand what's going on. So if they're not doing anything about what's going on, they're just as guilty about the things that's going on.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Clemens, this next question is directed towards you. Now, we know that you have formed the Rodney Mitchell Foundation, and you recently had a book bag giveaway and also an essay contest. Now, how are the events that we are seeing a call to action?
Well, the foundation has been effective for 8 years now. And what the foundation does is that once again, we're already in our community, so we know what our communities need. When it came to the recent event that we had, what we did, because again, I'm a nurse, we gave away school supplies, we gave away laptops, and I also educated the community regarding COVID-19. COVID-19 is extremely important to know, you know, how to, you know, practice safe hand washing, social distancing, hygiene, when it comes to also eating the right foods, hydration. So that was extremely important because, you know, once again, within the Black community, that's an increased rate of COVID positive results within our community. What we do is that I have a team that we sit down and we collaborate and we decide, you know, what we need to do, what's very important within our community. So this school supply, back to school supply COVID, our social distancing event was extremely important. We had the children write essays stating why they felt that, you know, needing a computer was extremely important. Now, we did receive lots of donations. We're still accepting donations. I've purchased multiple computers out of my own pocket. You know, at least 4 computers. Those computers are expensive. And, you know, the foundation donates all year long. It's not just for school. What we do is that we assist with tuition. We assist with, you know, food. Some families just can't afford to buy food. We also do in November, we're going to start doing turkey giveaways. We also, during Christmas time, we adopt families. So we need donations for all those things. We actually, and it doesn't matter, once again, if you're Black, red, or brown, we make sure that, you know, we treat everybody, you know, the same. So we will need, you know, financial assistance when it comes to, you know, the foundation. The foundation focuses on introducing awareness and prevention of racial profiling of African Americans and Hispanics in our country, which we provide, you know, assistance to the families of the victims as well. So this is what we do. I go and I'll speak to the families who's lost a loved one, you know, face to face, see what we can do, how we can go about assisting them. We cry, we laugh, you know, and this is a lifetime relationship that I gain. And, you know, because a lot of families don't know what to do, doesn't know which direction to turn. But being that I've been going through this for 8 years, you know, it's extremely, extremely, you know, important for me to help someone else.
If I could add to that question as well, um, Natasha is amazing. I honestly don't know, and I always, over the 8 years that I've worked with her, I've always asked, how does she get through it as a mother losing a child to police brutality? I never know how she gets through it. She is an amazing person, and what the Rodney Mitchell Foundation is doing is awesome. You know, Dr. King said it best when he stated, a threat to justice anywhere or injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And we're seeing that in this pandemic. While, you know, it is a healthcare crisis, I think, even to be Black, and we've been through a whole lot of stuff. Because we've been through so much, we kind of know we have a lot of survival tactic. But what a lot of people are seeing who have not necessarily been through what we're going through now, I don't think any of us in our lifetime have been through COVID and just a national pandemic where we can't go to the grocery store the way we did 6 or 7 months ago. I think with having events like what the Rodney Mitchell Foundation did, and BLM, we're doing back to school drives as well. We did one in Manatee County, and we're doing another one tomorrow in Newtown. But these events for us is really to give to those families who just don't have any other choice. There are families who are being forced back into public school settings, and they really don't have a choice. That's their only other option. They don't really have the support, or there's just, because everything is new. And so just the way of doing things is just all new. And we've saw how the pandemic and how COVID-19 has definitely impacted Black and African American communities at a very, very high rate. And so in an effort to support the families who really don't have a choice but to send their children back to school, we want to make sure that they have the equipment, that they have those essential supplies like hand sanitizer, like face masks, like whatever we can do at this point to protect these children and keep them safe, healthy, and learning. So I know for, you know, BLM, that's our objective with doing events like that. And not only that, but also getting our non-Black volunteers into these communities to build those relationships. You know, that is important more than anything. If you're going to fight for any Black person, is to be able to connect and have those experiences and have those built relationships. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Thanks, Deidre.
Next question is going to be for Larry. Larry, can you hear me here?
Yes.
There appears to be a perception by some that data showing a higher frequency of arrests in high crime areas correlates with or is caused by a racial animus on the part of law enforcement officers. Do you have an opinion regarding whether there are other factors that might explain this data? And if so, in what ways might better resource communities help to resolve any conditions which you believe contributes to the prevalence of high crime in predominantly minority areas?
I can only say that that's a really loaded question, and we could probably spend the next few hours on that topic alone. I think that, first of all, there's not a perception, it's a reality. And so when we look at police enforcement and the degree to which it is utilized in, I would say, neighborhoods of color, there's a higher degree of enforcement and the type of training. I don't think that there's emphasis on the part of law enforcement. I think it's part of our culture and part of the training that law enforcement receives. And I think that there is almost a warlike mentality when you patrol neighborhoods of color as opposed to other neighborhoods. You look at the armament that law enforcement is geared up with. You see the reality that Blacks comprise approximately, and I'm sure you'll be corrected, between 10 to 13% of the population, yet they represent 40% of the prison population. That you see that the reports and studies that have been done by organizations like the ACLU, the likelihood of being stopped. There was a wonderful study done entitled Walking While Black, the utilization of jaywalking statutes and how it is used in the Black communities as compared to other communities. So, you know, there's been a push for criminal justice reform. I can tell you from my personal experience within the criminal justice system, and I spent the last year as part of the Criminal Punishment Code Task Force, thinking that we were going to address our penal code and how it is approached. Remember, our criminal penal code, the opening line is that the criminal justice system is set up for one primary function, and that is punishment. Rehabilitation is a nice thought, but it's a secondary thought. And I think that we have so conflated public safety with punishment. And again, looking at the history of law enforcement, I think that's a real element that again, we talk about discussing history and understanding the culture and understanding what I see within my own clientele, the post-traumatic stress, that if you are raised in an environment that you are terrorized, and you know, going back to what Deidre was saying, proximity is the real key. When I listen to Brian Stevenson talk about, you cannot change anything if you don't experience it. So that kudos to what you're trying to express. And we have lived in silos. We live in such a ghetto community. And when I say ghetto community, we've created our own gated communities so that we don't have to interact and we don't experience one another. So I'm not going to blame law enforcement. I'm going to blame the culture that we have developed. And again, it goes back to confronting it and having an honest conversation. When you look at communities like South Africa, or you look at Chile, or you look at Argentina with Truth and Reconciliation, you have to confront and honestly assess what your history is before you can have any hopes of bringing about any change. Everything else to me is superficial if we can't start from that process and if we cannot accept our responsibilities. Do I blame law enforcement? No, they are just simply a vehicle to perpetuate what is already in existence.
Just a follow-up question to that, Larry. Actually, this will be directed to all the panelists. A couple times in this session here, the comments have been made that we need to keep talking about this. At what point we must continue having a conversation, and they will be uncomfortable conversations. How do you encourage everyone to keep having the conversations despite them being uncomfortable? And the second part of that question is, once we've had the conversation, what's the next step? How do we move forward from just conversation to action?
I think of these uncomfortable conversations as a growing pain. I like to call it a growing pain because you definitely grow from it. It's painful, but I think that people definitely grow from just having these uncomfortable conversations. I agree. Once we, have these conversations, which I don't think they need to stop even as we're going into action, because I feel that as long as you're a living being, you're a learning being, there does need to be a individualistic conversation of how far are you willing to go? What is your position in all of this? And what are you willing to do? What dark truths are you willing to confront in order to define what your action looks like in dismantling racism?
Keith, if I may just comment on that, I think that it's the conversation occurs in stages. that initial uncomfortable conversation may be an angry one. It may be very painful, but when the dust settles, then, and I use the statement that the bar issued after George Floyd's murder, that initial conversation was a tough one, but we didn't give up. We continued to work on it, and we came together at the end. It was a very uplifting and inspiring moment when we all came together. And I think all of us on this panel are committed to continuing the conversations, being prepared or being willing to be uncomfortable. I know in the Black Lives Matter website, you actually say that we white allies have to be willing to suffer discomfort and then together sit down and map out a strategy. And I'm using today's conversation as an example. We now know that Deidre needs help. We didn't know that before. Our association's Council for Diversity and Inclusion can be a valuable resource for you. We go out to Booker High School. We have mentorship program, but your movement can be another project. And lawyers, the one thing that we can say, they're very generous people. And if we put out a call for whatever you need, I know that you will be pleased at the response that you'll get. So I think once we all vent and get settled down, then we can begin to do the work. And we've got to do it together.
Yes, I would like to speak about it as well. I do agree exactly what Deidre's saying. Also, the Rodney Mitchell Foundation needs help as well, because we're out there in the community. I just think that, you know, just imagine having this consistent pain, you know, that I have with losing a son because of being Black. So what I've done is that I've turned my pain into power so that I can prevent any other child, oh God, anybody else from going through what I had to go through. And Deidre has been extremely instrumental in this. And I just have to say this on live, Deidre, I love you and I appreciate you and I miss you a lot. However, I am so excited that, you know, we've had this panel of discussion because it does hurt. But at the same time, it must be spoken about. And, you know, once again, we can move forward from today and continue to keep this conversation going because it's very, very important. It's sad that, you know, that we as Black people don't know if we're going to make it home today or tomorrow. We have to watch our backs as if we've committed crimes. We're professionals. We've gone to school. We're educated. But these conversations need to happen. We all need to learn and educate one another and, you know, and continue to move forward within changing the laws when it comes to police brutality, when it comes to not just changing the laws with police brutality, but also the police union. We have to be mindful, you know, those laws need to be changed as well. So again, I'm ready and I'm ready whenever, you know, let's do it. Let's move forward.
This final question, I know we're wrapping things up now. So if all the panelists can just talk about where do we go from here, and with Deidre Z and also Natasha, I know you guys indicated that you need help with the BLM movement, and also Natasha, you've indicated that you need help with the Rodney Mitchell Foundation as well. So if you can also, when you respond to the question, tell us how we can, you know, donate to these organizations.
Well, when it comes to the Rodney Mitchell Foundation, we have a Venmo, and we also have a Cash App that you can donate. And we accept all, you know, all type of supplies, school supplies, food, monetary gifts. And trust me, whoever donates, we always show the individual that donates exactly what was done with it. We show receipts. That's something that we do when it comes to as for the donors of the Rodney Mitchell Foundation. Whatever you can help with. I mean, when it comes to assisting with volunteering when we have different events, because we need all hands on deck. We need all hands on deck. And like Deidre said, come into our communities. Let's come see how we live. And trust me, you will be safe. safer than you expect. We will make sure that, you know, we take care of you, you know, when you're out there.
I'm going to jump in on one suggestion that I have, and that is I worked very hard on, and it's still in litigation with Amendment 4, with the restoration of civil rights for convicted
Yes.
felons. I would like to emphasize the importance of voting, familiarizing yourself with the issues, and don't be afraid to support candidates who enforce your beliefs and who suggest change, because change is necessary. Not only is it necessary, it's coming whether we like it or not. So embrace
Yes.
it is all I'm saying. But vote. Thank you.
And I'll make my plea, one last plea. The Booker High School Law Academy Mentorship Program is in dire need of additional mentors. So if any lawyer out there, you must be a lawyer to serve as a mentor, please let Holly Lips, our executive director of the bar, know. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Deidre Z. I'm with Black Lives Matter, Sarasota Manatee Alliance. And you can find us on Facebook. We have a lot of our information that we update through our Facebook and also on Instagram because we are millennials, so we love social media platforms. You can donate to, we have a Cash App, we have Venmo, and we have PayPal. All of our links to those softwares or donation systems, they're on our Facebook or Instagram, but they all are BLM Minnesota. Outside of that, like I said, we're doing a back to school drive, supply drive tomorrow. We'll be giving out over 300 backpacks with supplies and essential items that children will need. We are working with a few schools, public schools, to go in and volunteer with any tutoring services that they may need to kind of build that rapport. We also work with a few other organizations that do events in both Manatee and Sarasota counties, predominantly in the Black communities. And so there is like a pop-up shop that's coming up on September 6th that will be happening in Manatee County. We did support 5 Black businesses, and we try to support Black businesses as much as we can and push that out there. But we supported a group of Black businesses to participate in that pop-up shop. We'll be there ourselves. There will be different vendors at this event. That's September 6th. You can find that flyer on our Facebook page as well. If you want to stop by the backpack drive tomorrow just to say hi and to introduce yourself, I'll be there. Yeah, I think I covered it. We always need volunteers to help with different things that we're doing around the community. So thank you.
With that being said, it's now at the roundup time. So I'd like to, on behalf of the Sarasota County Bar Association and its Council for Diversity and Inclusion, we thank the viewers, the panelists, as well as the co-moderators for participating in this town hall. We hope you will attend the future town halls that we may be having. And I'd like you to have a great day. The struggle continues. Thank you.